Welcome to the Richardville Report with Senator Randy Richardville. This program comes to you from Lansing each month, bringing you up to date on issues that impact Southeast Michigan. This month's topics are Michigan STEM program, focusing education on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and the Regional Transportation Authority in Southeast Michigan. Now let's join Senator Richardville and his guests.
Hi, I'm State Senator Randy Richardville. I'm the Senate Majority Leader in the Michigan Senate, and I represent all of Monroe County, part of Jackson County, and parts of Washtenaw County. So welcome to the show today. We call this the Richardville Report, and today we're going to be talking about Michigan STEM. And STEM is an acronym that stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and it's a partnership. I'll give you a little introduction. The Michigan STEM Partnership is a public-private partnership to address the need for increasing student interest and achievement in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Again, STEM is what we call it. There was a $100,000 reward or award from the legislature this year, and this partnership has used some of the funding to hire Barbara Bolin, a PhD, as its executive director, and she will be one of our guests today. The other is Julie Soderberg, who is the Human Resources Manager for GERDAU Steel, a special steel, in North America's Monroe Mill. And at one point, I used to work there. Welcome, Julie, and welcome, Barbara. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, sir.
Good. Well, first of all, let me start with Julie, because Julie, I'm from Monroe, and I don't know if you are or not, but you work in the Monroe facility?
Yes, I have for about 3 years now.
About 3 years, and how do you like my neighborhood back there?
I love Monroe.
You do?
And I love that steel mill.
Well,
a lot
me too.
of great guys there.
We talked a little bit before the recording started that, you know, I worked there a long time ago. I was in supplier development, purchasing, negotiations, energy procurement, those kinds of things. And I had a great time there. I got to know a lot of the people. When you get back, would you please give my best to all of those that I used to work with and those that are there now, because that's a very important part of you know, the Southeast Michigan economy. And
Absolutely.
I've got a lot of friends there.
Yes, yes you do.
And Barbara, welcome to your new position.
Thank you.
I hope you're excited to take this on.
Very.
Could you tell us a little bit, first of all, before we get into the discussion about STEM, what your background is, and then we'll start talking about STEM a little bit?
Well, I am a mathematics and science teacher from way back, more years than I care to disclose. I was trained in Australia, which gives me a slightly different background to most of the STEM teachers around, but I've always taught in a very applied or cross-disciplinary kind of way, and as far as I can tell, it's almost impossible to teach mathematics without also teaching science and vice versa. So I've also been in career development for many years now, so I'm very attuned to what employers need. I try to stay abreast of all that. I've been teaching at the college level, so I've been preparing young people for their future careers. And I just think that this is a logical next step for Michigan.
Oh, very good. Now, you've been doing some work. Well, let me ask this question. When you talk about science, technology, engineering, or math, why versus the other disciplines is that an important one for the state of Michigan, do you think?
Well, I'm very glad you asked that, because the acronym STEM certainly does stand for those 4 disciplines, and they are vitally important. As we all know, I think by now, all of the jobs that are predicted to be available, certainly by the year 2018, most of them are STEM related in some way. But I think it's really important to establish right from the outset that when we talk about STEM education, it's actually broadened a lot from that basic acronym. And it has come to mean a cross-disciplinary approach to education. So we're really talking about a sort of cultural shift here in our pedagogical methods. The new generation science standards, for example, are not just science standards. They have a mathematics component, they have an engineering component. So we're working hard to prepare our teachers to adopt this new approach. So we're also concentrating on the social and written communication skills, how to speak, how to make presentations. All of those things are still needed by employers. So this cross-disciplinary approach to education will certainly focus on the 4 STEM areas, but it will broaden very much into the natural sciences, which of course is very important here in Michigan, into energy and all those sorts of fields, but will also include all those other subjects that are still important to develop a good skill set to make you employable.
Very good. Well, that's interesting. I know when I was in college, I was part of a program that's now called the GERDAU Management Program, and it was at Albion College, and Carl GERDAU, who was chairman of the board at Midland Dow, was also the chairman of the board of the college there. And although we studied mostly economics and management, we had to do public speaking, we had to do writing, we had to do lots of other things because most of the employers out there didn't just want someone who was very strong in the disciplines, but also could have a well-rounded approach to doing business in the workplace.
Well, they have to be able to speak with people, customers, and their colleagues at work. While we do most of our work on the computer these days, we still interact with people, I'm glad to say. And so that is very important. And also, a lot of the employees now have to go out and make presentations and that sort of thing. So, yes, we need a good general skill set, mostly what employers need. And please feel free to correct me here, Julie. But they want employees who have the basic foundational skills, but who are trainable. Not trained, but trainable. And that means that you have to have a wide skill set in order to fit into the slots that are currently there and will be there for the foreseeable future. The workplace has changed.
So with no special person or case in mind, you could have someone who graduated in a very strict disciplines and would be a self-proclaimed nerd maybe, that could eventually become governor of a state. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. We are looking, I think, more and more for what we call generalists, but you can't obviously train somebody for a specific career within a company if they don't have the foundational skills. So that's what we're hoping the next generation science standards and STEM education will do for our youngsters. Far too many of them are bored at school. That's another issue. Our dropout rate is fantastically high. Here in Lansing, for example, it's nearly 26%.
Wow.
And that's unacceptable. We're losing too many youngsters. And it's certainly been my experience, and probably yours too, Julie, that if you can get a youngster excited about what he or she is being taught, they can see the relevance of it, they know it leads them somewhere, then they will stay in school and they will do very well.
Very good. Yeah, it's good to see that we're taking not just the traditional approach to education, but expanding that.
That is the plan. We've got a lot of work to do to get there, but that is the plan.
Well,
the new science standards will not be implemented fully for another 18 months. But the partnership is already working with the math and science centers.
But we've done some other things in public education in Michigan, middle colleges, combining some of the disciplines, healthcare in particular. And so it's good to see that we are trying to take a look at the people that are in the classroom as well as the educational programs and how do we make them employable. But along those lines, let me just see if I could ask Julie, tell me GERDAU, and I'm pronouncing that correctly, right? Wow. Here in North America, you are a supporter of the program, especially here in Michigan, but tell me why you're involved and what relationship you have with this public-private partnership.
Well, we have a budding relationship. We are just starting out looking to partner with STEM. And like all companies, we pride ourselves in having engaged and a skilled workforce. And as we select new employees, we're looking for the skills like applied math, a mechanical aptitude, technologically savvy. And our ever-changing manufacturing environment needs that kind of skill set. The creative thinkers, the innovative thinkers. Just because we're a steel mill doesn't mean that we check our brains and our trunks before we come in.
Well, you know, I worked there for a while and I've known the steel industry for a while. Making steel requires a lot of brain work.
Absolutely.
Not to mention safety and other kinds of things. But the communication, as the markets go up and down, you can't just be a steel maker and just know this aspect of the of the entire process. But you have to know the industry, you have to know global markets, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that your company has been a big supporter of this kind of thing for a long time.
Absolutely.
And how did you two get to know each other? I mean, did you look on a website or did you run into each other at a, you know,
it was destiny. It was fate.
It was destiny.
It was destiny. Yes.
Well, tell me a little bit about how it got started, because I know there are some people and companies out there that will see this and say, "Now that's interesting. I'd like to find out more about it. How do I do that?" But in this case, first tell me the history between your company and this program. Can we do that?
Well, I'm so new to this that all I can tell you is the basic structure of the partnership and how other partners have become involved, and then Julie, you'll have to step
I'll
in
add to
and
that.
help me out
Sure.
that.
Okay.
The state of Michigan has been divided into 5 hubs, which means each hub, of course, is
HUB,
huge.
hub.
HUB.
Okay,
Yes.
want to make sure I got that right.
And if I can dare to pun here, there's quite a lot of hubbub going on out there.
You do that, that was just Barbara, okay? That was her on her own, nothing in a script.
That was very positive, though. It was a positive comment because there are so many wonderful things going on in the hubs. And the St. Clair hub is no exception. They already have 71 partners.
71 different companies that are working?
Different companies involved with them. Now, they have, when we say partners at this point, up to this point, it's been, that can mean different things in different cases. We're not looking necessarily, although of course money is always welcome, but that isn't what we want from the industry people. We want industry people to sit at the table with us and tell us what skill sets they need and to help us and guide us and help educators and students by giving them internships and work experiences, even for the teachers and that sort of thing. It's an extensive list that we've developed for what we would like from our partners. And so to have 71 in the St. Clair region is sort of amazing. This is over a 12-county region. And I understand that GERDAU has been, well, as Julie said, we have a budding relationship. They haven't officially, quote, signed on the dotted line, whatever that means. But they are very interested in what we are trying to do.
How early, tell me, how early do in the educational ladder, so to speak, how early do you get young people involved at the steel mill?
We actually have co-ops who are age 16 that can work in the office. We do internships more for college level students,
okay.
who are engineers to be. Right. That is a huge focus for GERDAU, and I would assume any steel mill would. That engineering focus, yes. Very important.
Of course, to answer your question more generally, it depends on the nature of the business. You can't bring very young children in. We have liability issues and that sort of thing. So what they're doing is exactly on the money. But STEM education is actually pre-kindergarten on.
Okay, that's where I was getting.
We see it as a continuum. It's never too early to start talking at an age-appropriate level, not about specific careers. We're not trying to train people. Remember, we're trying to make them trainable. There's a world of difference.
I did a couple of internships. In fact, the program I was talking about, I was required to do at least 2 semester-long internships in a business environment. I was late teens, early 20s, something like that. And my daughter was actually a co-op back before GERDAU bought the steel mill. So I know a little bit about that program. One of the things I've been talking to labor and business leaders about, though, is a 3-year-old is 15 years away from being potentially in your workplace.
Right.
So you need to be invested early into the education process. And as global kinds of competition grows and those kinds of things happen, we've got to be competing with China and India, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that our young people are prepared. And this kind of exposure, I think, is awesome, especially like you said, age appropriateness when it's time to start picking a career. But early on, you got to realize that being a functioning member and contributing member of society is something we're all trying to do, and that's the path we want to put you on.
Exactly.
We're running just about out of time, but why don't you just give me a couple of key things we want to make sure that the people out there get a chance to listen to before we close down.
I'd like to help them to understand that we're not talking about tipping the whole educational system upside down. All we're doing is taking the content that for the most part we already teach, but we do it in silos, and integrating it so that teachers talk to one another across disciplines and students get a better idea of the relationship and the relevance of what they're being taught. It just helps the learning process enormously.
Great. And Julie, is there anything you want to talk about before we close out?
Well, absolutely. No matter what the industry, what the business, or company, aptitudes for math, science, technology is of the utmost importance.
Right.
Very good. Well, Barbara Bolin is the Executive Director of the Michigan STEM Partnership, and Julie Soderberg is with GERDAU, Special Steel North America's Monroe Mill. You can learn more about MISTEM Partnership, and that's MISTEM Partnership, all one word, .com, and we certainly appreciate the fact that you tuned in to listen to us today. I'm State Senator Randy Richardville. Have a great day.
25,000 mornings, give or take, is all we humans get. We spend them on treadmills, we spend them in traffic, and if we get lucky, really lucky, it dawns on us to go spend them in a world where a simple sunrise can still be magic. 25,000 mornings. Make sure some of them are pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
Hello and welcome back. This is Randy Richardville, and this is the Richardville Report. This is the second half of our show today, and if you didn't know this, our state has taken some huge steps recently to improve transportation, public transportation, primarily in southeastern Michigan, with legislation that was recently signed by Governor Snyder. I have two guests today that are going to help me to discuss this a little bit. First of all, my old friend, I don't mean old like you're old, O-L-E, okay?
Thank you.
My old friend Paul Tait, who's the Executive Director of Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. A lot of people commonly know that as SEMCOG. Welcome, Paul. It's always nice to see you. Yeah, it's good to have you. And Richard Murphy, who is the Program Director for the Michigan Suburbs Alliance. It's nice to have you here, Richard. We're going to talk a little bit more about your background and some of the involvement that you're going to have with this new, I guess you could call it a board, commission, authority. I'm not sure what the right words are at this point, but thank you both for being on the show today. You know, I was talking a little bit earlier before we started the taping about, you know, Michigan, especially southeast Michigan, is the place where the automobile was invented. It's also the place where the very first paved road was in the United States. That was Woodward Avenue, I believe. And yet, in that same area that set standards for transportation so many years ago, we don't have a regional transit type system, a mass transit, something that can move people in and around the greater Detroit region. And yet so many cities across the country and across the world have that and can offer so much more to not only their residents but to visitors, and it can help the commerce of the general area. Sure. So, Paul, I know, well, let me start with you, Richard. You've just been appointed to represent Washtenaw County.
That's right.
On the new board, the Regional Transit Authority Board. And why don't you tell me what are your specific duties on that board, and then maybe a little bit overall about what the mission is of the organization.
All right. Well, in general, the Regional Transit Authority is tasked with coordinating the operations of the various local transit providers within the area, SMART, DDOT, AATA, and also with developing the rapid transit connections between the counties and between the major cities, Ann Arbor to Detroit being the one that Washtenaw County is most interested in. As you mentioned, we used to be able to go across the state on the interurbans and had train networks to carry people everywhere. That we've let that go over the decades, and it is an economic competitive advantage to have those transportation options. So it's the job of the Regional Transit Authority Board to oversee building those back up over time.
Hey, I'm going to be frank because that's, well, I mean, I'm Randy, but I'm going to be frank about this. You have the Detroit Department of Transportation, DDOT. You have a SMART system out there. You've had other systems in and around Detroit, like the People Mover, that aren't terribly impressive to those from the outside. What's going to make this one different? I mean, it took a while for me to get on board, but maybe Paul and then Richard, if you could just tell me what you think is going to make this different than the old failed systems that we've had before.
Well, first and foremost is there's an imperative to improve transit in this region. Of the top 25 metropolitan areas in this country, we are dead last. We're the only region, major metropolitan region in the country without some form of higher transit. Shame on us.
Yeah, San Francisco, they have those trolley cars. In Detroit, they or excuse me, Chicago, they have the L. I mean, some places, Atlanta has MARTA. Some places are known for their transportation system. What Detroit is known for is not having a transportation system. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And what we've been saying for literally, unfortunately, for decades now, is we need two things to move transit forward in this region. We need governance, a regional transit authority to get us off dead center and manage a true regional system, and we need a way of funding it. Every major metropolitan area across the country that has improved transit has had those two pieces. we didn't have that. And I do want to commend you, Senator, for your leadership in finally getting this off dead center and getting a regional transit authority passed. That took a lot of guts, and we are eternally grateful to you.
Well, thank you very much. And I know you've been involved with TMCOG and in transportation in general in southeastern Michigan. What got my attention, because my first and foremost concern is making sure that, you know, taxpayers' dollars, in Michigan we have hardworking men and women, and we take their tax dollars and we want to give them a halfway decent return on it, and they haven't always gotten that. This is a case where a group of local businessmen in Detroit created a project called M1. And I don't know exactly how many, but it was close to $100 million. People like Dan Gilbert and Roger Penske and other folks that have invested so much into the city of Detroit. And this is about a 3-4 mile back and forth transit system that goes along Woodward to help with a lot of the entertainment, a lot of the living places, a lot of, you know, places where people would go to eat, be entertained, whatever. But all that whole corridor, and that was their own money, and except for some foundational money, but no taxpayer dollars there. But what this program did was leverage those funds in a matching program so that federal funds could now come into Detroit to invest in a 5-county region. Am I right? Is it 5 counties?
4 counties, right?
4 counties, okay. 4-county region. So it's not just the city of Detroit, it's the city of Detroit and 4 other regions, and to provide a transportation system that was, I think, needed terribly.
Yeah. You used the right term, and that is a transportation system. You can't just have a rail line going here or a bus rapid transit line going there. You need a core bus service to feed whatever higher order transit you have. And it all has to come together. That's why you want a multi-county system, and we're starting with four counties, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Washtenaw. But there's a provision in there for adjacent counties to come in, like Monroe, possibly even Jackson, but more likely Monroe in the future, for them to come in as they perceive a value added for them joining this broader system.
Yes, and I know we've had some of these conversations going back 10, 12 years where we talked about an opt-in versus a forced kind of program. And so that's another reason why I'm very supportive. But you know, I also represent, besides all of Monroe County, a good portion of Washtenaw County. Richard, places like Pittsfield and York Township and Bridgewater, Manchester, Leone, all those areas there. Okay, so the Washtenaw County piece is important to me as well. When you talk about a Detroit Regional Transit Authority, some people think it's just the city of Detroit. Now here you're representing an area over in Washtenaw County that's, you know, maybe 40, 50 miles away from the city of Detroit. So how does that benefit people that don't live right directly in Detroit?
Well, we are 45 minutes outside of Detroit by car, but there are 20,000 people a day who commute from Washtenaw County into Wayne County to work, and another 30,000 who commute out of Wayne County. Right,
was that right? I didn't know that.
To work in Washtenaw County. So we have 50,000 people a day driving back and forth between Washtenaw County and Wayne County alone. 3,000 or 4,000 driving from Washtenaw County into the city of Detroit to work. So you have people living in your district in Pittsfield Township who spend 2 hours of their day every day driving in and out of Detroit to work, and they don't have a choice. That's 2 hours of their day that they spend behind the wheel staring at the pavement. Yeah, they might love to be doing something else, catching up on their reading or their sleep or doing work. So
you're talking about a real system that's not. Here's some of the criticism that I've heard about systems gone past is, well, I see this bus come by, you know, like 4 or 5 times a day. I'll see these buses, and there's 3 people in them, and that's when they seem to be the most utilized. This is something where you're going to say, hey, look, we can put thousands of people in. It does not have one stop, but there's stops along the way where you can get in. You can read your newspaper, you can drink your coffee, you can use your iPad, whatever, on your way commuting in and out of Ann Arbor, Detroit, and actually save fossil fuels, save gas costs, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely, and then the other part of it is, again, for us to be competitive economically, in a global economy, but certainly a national economy. We need to be able to have all the amenities for that younger knowledge-based worker, Richard's peers.
That's right.
Not mine, but Richard's peers, that will fuel that knowledge-based economy of the future. Those folks are looking for transit. They're looking for entertainment amenities. They're looking for educational opportunities. All of those things that transit can be the glue to help get that together.
Okay, all right. So tell me a little bit about the time frame. What's going to happen? When is this? Some people putting shovels in the ground next week, next month, next year? How's that going to look?
Well, we're right at the start of the process right now. It took a lot of leadership at every level, from the legislature to the governor, the county heads, to get us to where we are now, but it's still just a starting point. We've got a lot of work to do to get to the point where there's big visible things going. We still don't have the whole board appointed yet. That's still taking maybe another month before we'll be able to start meeting. And then we've got a lot of work to look at all the plans that have been done in the past, make sure we understand. I'm from Washtenaw County and fairly familiar with AATA, but I don't know the nuts and bolts of DDOT and SMART. Similarly, Macomb County's representatives probably won't be familiar with how AATA works and what's happening over there. So making sure that we know where we're coming from, what we've got to work with.
And I think an important thing, following up on what Richard is absolutely correctly saying, is some of the first steps, once the board gets organized, and SEMCOG is going to be a part of helping staff the RTA until they select their own CEO and get their structure in place. But some of the successes are going to be making the existing separate entities, SMART, DDOT, AATA, work better together. Get efficiencies out there back to the economies, using our taxpayer dollar wisely. There'll be those kinds of things, as well as moving to higher order transit. So my caution would be, let's all be patient. We've been waiting for this for decades. We got to get it up and running. We will do it right, and we will get the transit system that we all want.
Right, and we've got the Washtenaw County to Detroit commuter rail project that some of us have been working on for 10 or 15 years at this point.
I had hair when I started.
So, yeah, I can't promise I'm going to make that happen next month, but we can look at things, just how do we better make the systems we've got work together at the points where they're overlapping, or make more places where you can get from Ann Arbor's system into the Metro Detroit system, because there just aren't those options available to people right now.
Okay, well, that's awesome. You know, I'm very excited. Like I said, it took me a while to get on board. Once I understood the ins and outs, I worked hard to get this legislation passed.
And we thank you.
Definitely.
Well, you're very welcome. I think it's the right thing. You know, not to make a pun or anything, but I think Michigan is starting to get back on the right track. We're starting to move in the right direction. We're not there yet, but we're taking steps along the way. This is one of them. You know, look at the Detroit lighting project, where half the lights were burned out. Right. Those are being replaced. The new announcement of the Illich facility that's going to be used 200 nights a year, something like that. The whole corridor with the M1 transportation project, and now a regional transit authority that's going to provide.
Can't you feel it?
Right.
It's starting to get, we're on our way. Yeah. We're on our way, and I feel good about some of the things that we're doing, because in Monroe, we look to Detroit, and in Washtenaw County, you look to Detroit. All of Southeast Michigan, Detroit, has about half the people in that of the state down in that corner, so it's vitally important to us. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I'm very happy to have Paul Tait, the Executive Director of the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, and Richard Murphy, who is a new member for the Regional Transit Authority, and also the Program Director for the Michigan Suburbs Alliance. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
And I'm State Senator Randy Richardville. It's always great to have you tune in to the Richardville Report. Thank you.